Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Panzer IV-G for Italy. This is a currently 3.7 BR, rank 3 premium medium tank in the Italian Ground Forces tech tree. This vehicle currently costs 1,750 Golden Eagles when not on sale, and comes with 10 backups. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this tank, including its stats, how it plays, I'll go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing to my channel, but without further ado, let's get into it. Now with that said, to start, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its cannon, its armor thickness, and its reload rate. Now, for how it plays. Though this is the Panzer IV-G, which is something that the German tech tree also has, the Italian premium variant that I am reviewing in this video has the long L48 75mm cannon, whereas the German Panzer IV-G has the somewhat shorter L43 75mm cannon. This means that while they both have excellent ballistics, the Italian version of the G variant has superior armor pen capabilities with both its APCPC and APCR shells, as well as an increased muzzle velocity which makes firing at range even easier. What this means is that the Italian Panzer IV-G has an extremely powerful cannon for this BR, and even benefits from the somewhat increased armor of the Panzer IV-G. This means that this vehicle can both snipe and, in some instances, brawl successfully. The KWK-40 L48 cannon is an absolute beast and is still extremely effective in a full up tier, let alone down tiers. It will slice through most enemies like a hot knife through butter, regardless of where you land your hit, as it has that much more armor pen relative to typical enemy armor around this BR. Even better is that this has explosive filler inside the excellent PCGR 39 APCPC shell, which means that on top of having excellent penetration capability, this does pretty decent post-pen damage as well. This all combines to make the Italian Panzer IV-G into one of the most effective tanks in terms of cannon performance at this BR in the entire game, regardless of your tech tree. In fact, it might be the most effective at and around this BR. Further, because it has an additional 30mm of armor on a large portion of the front of the hull, as well as an additional 20mm of track armor on top of that, this vehicle can be an effective brawler, as it can shrug off hits against lower BR enemies with relative ease. In my experience though, ricochets and non-pens are far more likely to occur at decent range, as the 80mm of armor is only on some parts of the front of the hull and not on the turret, and is on completely flat armor, which means that it doesn't gain any additional effectiveness as it doesn't have a built-in angle, kind of like what you might see on the T-34 and of course the Sherman tanks. Beyond this, the speed on this vehicle is okay but not great. It's pretty much average with a decent engine, weight, and suspension. It's nothing special, but it won't stop you from playing how you want. In my experience though, the prime roles for this vehicle are in sniping, supporting while in up tiers, and even brawling while in down tiers, though flanking is doable regardless of the BR that you're fighting if you're smart about it and can protect your relatively thin armor. Again, the armor on this thing, front, sides, and rear, is relatively thin, but at least the front has up to 80mm. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. Relative to BR, the long 75mm is incredibly powerful, with over 140mm of armor pen at max and decent post-pen damage with its PZGR 39 APCPC shell. Second, along the front of the hull sits two lines of 80mm of armor, of which are actually usable when angling and while at a range from the enemy. These additional sheets of armor are on two of the forward glacis plates, with the lower of the two also having 20mm of additional track armor on top of the 80mm of standard steel armor. Third, there's spaced armor around the turret that can disrupt heat shells, as well as some shells from weaker cannons. Fourth, this vehicle has great vertical guidance of between -10 and +20 degrees. Fifth, the Panzer IV-G benefits from both a smoke grenade launcher and the use of smoke shells that you can shoot from its cannon. Beyond this, it carries APCR shells with over 180mm of armor pen at max. And finally, this vehicle has premium RP and SL bonuses, both being noticeably better than the premium Italian Sherman 1 Composito. Now for weaknesses, aside from the aforementioned strip of 80mm armor across some parts of the front of this vehicle, the armor on the Panzer IV-G is poor, suffering from a combination of it being both flat and relatively thin. Second, While not distinctly bad, the mobility on this vehicle is decent at best. It feels slightly worse than what its 12.7 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio would suggest, though this basically means that it is painfully average. Third, this vehicle has an absolutely huge commander's cupola weak spot that will make it easier to damage this vehicle when it is otherwise hidden behind cover. And finally, the ammo storage is everywhere in this tank, and is especially centered around the obvious areas to hit, such as the flat side armor. Now with all that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for armament, I give it an 8.75 out of 10. In my opinion, the armament on this vehicle is about as good as you can get at this BR. Between its high armor pen, good post-pen damage, great accuracy, good reload speed, and very good muzzle velocity, the long 75mm on this vehicle is likely going to be the best in every match that it will be in, at least insofar as conventional tanks are concerned, and regardless of if you're in an up tier or a down tier. The only things keeping this tank from being at a 9 out of 10 or above is simply that this vehicle lacks a top-mounted MG of any kind, and that the L43 at 3.3 BR is very slightly marginally better relative to BR compared to the longer L48 on the Panzer IV-G for the Italians. Regardless, the APCR shell can also step up your armor pen to over 180mm at max if you somehow can't make it through with the superior PZGR39 APCBC shell. In short, I really don't know if there are any tanks that this cannon cannot destroy easily from the front that is within its normal BR bracket. Now for mobility, I give it a flat 5 out of 10. The mobility on this vehicle is essentially as average as you can get. It isn't bad, nor is it good. It has a 12.7 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio, which is identical to the premium Italian Sherman. The difference here is that despite the top speed being better on the Panzer IV-G, it has a lesser suspension compared to the Sherman. If this vehicle had the Ostketten modification, like the shorter gun Panzer IV-G has, I would rate this probably a 5.25 out of 10, but alas, it does not. Because of these factors, with a middling suspension, engine, and more, it is just average at best in terms of mobility. Now for survivability, I give it a 4.5 out of 10. While not terrible, the survivability on the Panzer IV-G isn't good. If nothing else, it actually has usable armor on the front end of this vehicle, as well as debatably useful spaced armor around the turret. These can and have helped me survive shots that I would not have survived without the additional armor. Regardless, the vast majority of this tank does not benefit from the additional armor granted from this model, thus making it an easy vehicle to kill when shooting against the front of the turret, the sides of the tank, and more. It has flat armor that means that anything as powerful as the 75mm M3 cannon on any Sherman should be able to defeat this vehicle with ease, regardless of where you get hit, even against the frontal, thicker armor plate. Still, having smoke grenades, smoke shells, and additional track armor do boost the survivability of this vehicle by a bit, but it's still mediocre at best in this regard. But again, you can still make use out of that frontal hull armor. Now with that said, overall, I give this a 6.25 out of 10. The Panzer IV-G is an extremely powerful vehicle with many deep and noticeable flaws. If you spot the enemy first, you should be able to defeat it every time when using this vehicle. If they spot you first, then hope that you can angle quickly and that they are a bad shot or don't know your weak spots. This basically means that it is amazing at sniping around this BR, and even while in full up tiers. Unlike other vehicles whose armament gets long in the tooth pretty quickly, such as the 75mm equipped Shermans, the long 75 on the Panzer IV-G is completely up-tierable and then some. A way to look at it is that if this vehicle had the armor of a heavy tank, you'd be looking at the currently 5.0 BR German KV-1, of which is also equipped with the long 75mm. Basically, what I'm saying is that, so long as you don't mind being a little bit of a glass cannon, the Panzer IV-G is hugely powerful at this BR. Now with that said, do I recommend this vehicle? As a fan of big guns and German tanks in general, I will say 100% yes. This is a great tank with an excellent cannon and surprisingly decent frontal armor, at least relative to other Panzer IVs. I feel that more advanced and skilled players will benefit from this vehicle more, as they will be more likely to minimize its weaknesses, but it can still do wonders for anyone who plays it. Mix this in with its fairly good though not amazing cost of 1,750 Golden Eagles, and you get a very good deal, at least in my opinion. I think that the premium Sherman 1 Composito, otherwise known as the M4 Hybrid, will be better better for more players, as it's a bit more versatile and only costs 1300 Golden Eagles, but those players that might like sniping and even brawling will love the Panzer IV G even more than the Sherman. So yes, I fully recommend this vehicle, though I do slightly recommend the premium Italian Sherman above this for newer players. I also give the Panzer IV G from Italy my Tankenstein seal of approval. While I would possibly wait for a sale on this vehicle just because I'm a bit of a cheapskate, buying this vehicle at full price really is not a bad idea either. Quite frankly, it's got good premium RP and SL bonuses, better than the premium Italian Sherman, and again, it can whoop butt. Now with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as all of those things help my channel, especially if you like this kind of video. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.